Sabrok's Laws for Being an Honorable Gamer, Part 2. The second law is accurate representation of the game. Always represent the game accurately. Another way to put it is to be honest with the other players. If you are obscuring... Now, this gets into some complication when you talk about board games that have hidden information rules. Obviously, sometimes it is critical to the game to obscure information or to intentionally attempt to misrepresent the game state. And it's part of the game. Those are exceptions, obviously. But in general, represent the game state as accurately as you possibly can. Don't lie to players. Don't arrange the pieces of the game such that it makes the game seem different than it is. This comes up a lot, and I've talked about this a number of times before. In RPGs, I would express this rule as lie to the characters, not the players, right? Because obviously characters in a story might get incorrect information. They might misconstrue the situation. They might get lied to by other characters. That'll happen. But the players are your friends, presumably. They're real human beings that you are playing with. So let's be honest with them. There are a number of techniques for carrying this out in an RPG that I've thought about in some detail. It's a lot easier, frankly, in a board game, as long as there aren't elements of the game where you are supposed to misrepresent the game state. Bluffing games and so on. It can potentially get a little bit tricky there because the whole point is to misrepresent the game state. But like within the rules and within the intent of the game, and while following law number 1, which is value the things that the game tells you to value, basically follow the instructions of the game. But other than that, be honest about the state of the game. Don't misrepresent the game. And you do this partly because just being honest is a good rule of thumb. Like, that should be your default state, right? And also because, and this kind of comes down to why I call this my list of rules for being an honorable gamer, and not necessarily for being a good gamer. It is dishonorable, let us say, to achieve a victory through deceit. And if you do, and that is not the point of the game, then I think it's safe to say that people are going to kind of give you a little bit of side-eye. They're going to start double-checking you, or they're going to stop playing with you altogether. Either way, it's bad for you in the long run. Now this, aside from like games where everything is public information or there is hidden information or it's a bluffing game, aside from all that, you get into the more complicated territory of political games. Games about negotiation and deal making and deal breaking. Is it honorable to make a deal in a game and then break it when that is expedient for you, let us say, when like it is advantageous to renege on a deal in order to gain a benefit elsewhere. That, I think, has to be taken on a case-by-case basis. In some games, that would be cool. In other games, it would be not cool. I know that when I play the L5R card game, our group has a culture of always abiding by the deals that we make. Now, in a multiplayer game, there is a treaty mechanic where you can set the terms of the treaty, and there is a mechanical penalty if you break that treaty. But even without that, and it's exceedingly rare that anyone breaks treaties in that format, but even without that, in one-on-one, that mechanic doesn't exist. Even in one-on-one, our culture, our group, very much abides by what we say we're going to do. Partly because that's the culture of the game, but also because that's just how we have developed our relationship in this pastime. So that's something you kind of have to take on a group by group and maybe even a game by game basis. You know, if I'm playing Twilight Imperium and I have a deal with somebody and they're about to win the game, I will break that deal to stop them from winning, because trying to win the game is more valuable than abiding by a deal that was made perhaps under entirely different circumstances. And to be clear, I wasn't like, this is in this hypothetical scenario, I am not lying when I make the deal. I may fully intend to abide by it when I make that deal. But circumstances change, and there can only be one winner. And I would prefer it to be me. But I would try to be, like, clear about the terms of my deal. Like, you know, I think it's... I want to say that it is natural to interpret any kind of deal as, except in extreme circumstances, like if somebody is about to win. Like, I think this is kind of an unspoken, assumed caveat to any kind of negotiation, especially in a game like Twilight Imperium. But again, like, double check with your group about what they think about that kind of stuff, because some groups are going to be more cool with it than others. And some groups are going to remember it more than others. And you kind of have to take that into consideration, you know. Like, maybe I can salvage this game now by breaking a deal. But is that going to come back to bite me later when this same group remembers that I'm the guy who broke the deal that game? So that's something you have to worry about. But yeah, it is dishonesty within the context of game mechanics, I think is fine. You know, if it is a bluffing game, or if you're in an RPG and an NPC is lying to the characters, that's fine. But what you don't want to do is, as a player, lie to the other players when that is not part of the game. Let me focus this context into that of an RPG for a moment. Do not misrepresent the game mechanics to the players. If they ask a question to you as a player, you can decline to answer, of course, but if you answer, make sure you answer to the best of your ability. What I don't like is this sort of like, when a GM, usually a DM, actually, because this is kind of an old school D&D cultural thing. What I don't like is when the GM is like, how to even put this? I'm trying to think if there's any like specific examples, like a story I could tell where this happened. If the game has information that is available to the players, such as, let me give you this example. So here's an example where I taught somebody a thing or two about honestly representing the game state. I was in a Blades in the Dark campaign, and my character was new to the group, and we were fighting a character, an NPC that I had not met before. Everyone else kind of had a sense of who he was. It came to blows. I don't remember over what. Attack. In Blades in the Dark, you ask for position and effect. Position is how dangerous the thing you are doing is, and effect is how much of an effect your action might have, depending on the results of the dice. And both could enter into it. And I was told, because he's a normal dude, it is risky normal, which is sort of the default position. So I was like, cool, I'll take those odds. And I rolled either a 6 or a crit. It was really good, like a full success. And it didn't do anything. And the guy just kind of like took it and shrugged and teleported away. And I was upset because I had been lied to about the position and effect, because like clearly I had no effect on this guy. Come to find out, he was a demon in disguise. He was disguised as a human, but he was actually a demon, and so we didn't really have a chance of hurting him in that encounter anyways. And so I had a talk with the GM afterwards about how, like, in Blades in the Dark in particular, and since then I have expanded this, and I think it applies pretty equally to all games. Like, telling me that my position and effect was one thing when it was actually another is lying to me as a player, and that's not good. It's not acceptable. It's no bueno. What he should have done in that case was tell me that there are circumstances, like at the very least, tell me there are circumstances your character is not aware of that's causing your position and effect to be desperate, no effect. And I, as a player, could decide then, well, I don't think my character would be aware of that, so he's going to go for it anyways. Or I think it'd be more interesting if I look for a solution that has an actual effect. You know, that leaves it up to me as a player to make an informed decision. If I am lied to, I can't make an informed decision. This also comes into play when it comes to like, so here's another thing. This is not always GM versus player in RPGs. Sometimes it's player versus player. Because sometimes what you'll find is that a player wants to do something without the party's knowledge. And so they're going to give like secret messages to the GM about what their character is doing. And they might go off to the side or have like a group text between sessions or something like that about what their character is doing. And no one else is any the wiser. Can you guess what the issue is there? Now, our characters have no chance of learning any part of this, having any part of this, setting up, like let's say it's a betrayal situation, which I know is kind of cringe in D&D, but it works in other RPGs. Like, there's no interaction there. We as players are not informed of things that we should be, and therefore our characters cannot be informed. We can't bring to bear any tools that we might have, because there's a lot of meta tools in RPGs where like you as a player are making a decision that the character isn't necessarily consciously aware that they are doing. It's the end of that. But we don't get to do any of that because we as players are not told. Players have to experience the world entirely through the lens of what the GM is telling them. And so if the GM gives them bad information, the players are going to make bad decisions. And that's not a good time. So, anyways, it's the general statement. Be honest, represent the game accurately. If you want to focus it down to RPGs specifically, then I would say lie to the characters, not the players. But just a sort of honest approach to gaming in general, I think takes you pretty far. I think it's important in ways that are perhaps more profound than a lot of people realize.